When you work with watches, there are always products which sit in the back of your mind. These are watches which you know that you expect to be good, but you can't help hoping that the excitement you have for reviewing them isn't disappointed. I've known that I will be producing a review of the Ollech and Wajs C-1000 for quite a few months now, and a few days ago I finally received it. You see, the C-1000 is the continuation of a dive watch which is as unknown amongst anyone but an enthusiast as it was incredible in its day. After their creation in 1956, Ollech and Wajs worked with Jenny, the firm which resurrected Doxa in 1997, to develop the 702 case, the first 1000-metre water-resistant watch case. Its design was a monoblock one, with a fully polished form and divergent lugs. From this was created the Ollech and Wajs Caribbean 1000, with a now iconic dial design. However, after just a few years in the mid to late 60s, it disappeared. The Caribbean 1000 has been replicated by many brands, from Zoretto to Crepas, with fantastic results, yet O&W themselves haven't offered an answer, until now that is. Before I begin, remember to like, share and subscribe for more, and head over to our Instagram page to see all the latest articles, podcasts and videos before anyone else. They also find plenty of stunning photography. Also visit our website for daily articles about new releases, the history of watches and much, much more. When approaching this watch, Ollech and Wajs chose not to simply replicate the original. This watch is, and I can't emphasise this enough, not just another remake of a vintage watch. They've started at the core because this watch isn't the usual token Swiss made whereby 60% of the watch's value is Swiss. No, this watch is over 90% Swiss, with components such as the hands being produced elsewhere. Just as the build of this watch is truly Swiss, the design is no replica of the original watch. It is instead a true evolution, something very refreshing. The case of the watch is virtually the same diameter as the original at 39.56mm, but where the original had polished divergent lugs, this watch has straight lugs with a fine and fluid brushed finish. These give real grace to what was, even in its day, quite a bulbous design. The case is perfectly balanced due to these gently curved and elongated lugs, yet there's so much more to be said about the feel of the case. The 15.8mm thickness of this watch is notable as it doesn't, at least in practice and on the wrist, feel like it exists. To achieve such a water resistance of 1000 metres, the caseback and crystal are thickened. Even so, the caseback itself is very gently domed and sinks into the wrist to allow the C-1000 to wear like a much more modest piece. Interestingly, this watch no longer has a monoblock case, which makes sense given that modern technology allows such a water resistance with the convenience of an opening caseback. Ironically, whilst this watch hides its beautiful caseback, the bezel and crystals celebrate the shape and feel of the original watch, but with a modern execution. The bezel has a wide steel rim which slopes up aggressively away from the coin edge. To match this, the crystal is spectacularly domed and delivers the rounded top which was so prominent on the original piece. Speaking of the bezel, it operates with 120 clicks, which give the same firm but smooth click as my Omega Seamaster does. Clearly the spring has been fitted into the underside of the bezel very well, as it doesn't have to be so tight that rotating the bezel is difficult to prevent any backplay. It's in details like this that the Swiss quality of this watch is very evident. In keeping with modernity, the crystal is sapphire and is given a superb anti-reflective coating, which creates a stunning blue refraction on the edge of the crystal under direct light. The bezel insert is also scratch-resistant sapphire, and unlike replicas of the original, the proportions are accentuated. Its width is reduced, thus giving it real elegance, whilst it's fully graduated for ease of reading. The result is stunning to look at, although the narrow profile makes it something you have to get used to. Without marring the crisp lines of the case, the crown protrudes aggressively from the side flank and incorporates a triple seal system to ensure water resistance. Like the case, it's brushed, yet its ergonomics are phenomenally well considered. A really delightful touch is the 56 as a reference to the brand's year of establishment, whilst the 44 signed on the top of the crown rounds off the number to 100 atmospheres. It's a real rarity to come across a brand with a characteristic dial design, something which this watch's most obvious rival, Oris, has nailed with both Aquis and Diver 65 lines. However, O&W in the last few years have reached a similar level with triangles and batons around their dials. Such an arrangement, in stark contrast to the 1960s counterpart, appears on this watch and is produced with simply stunning quality. The base of the dial is matte black, whilst the printing of all non-luminous elements of the dial is printed a cold white so as to produce a 3D effect and visible contrast. At 12, 3 and 9 we have applied triangles of brushed metal which hold a considerable amount of superluminova, whilst their finishing, which matches the small square at 6, is impeccable. Most importantly, the finishing exudes a technical no-nonsense feel, which exists in the case too. When you look at the dial of this watch through the heavily domed crystal, you can almost imagine the gauge of a submarine or the instrument of a watch on the wrist of a diver as the only connection between him and the surface. Even the logo printed at 12 with its propeller form brings images of machinery operating under spectacular pressure to mind. I must also commend Ollech and Wajs for the placement of the date at 6, as in black, it commands a symmetrical position whilst also disappearing when you don't need it. The hands give a similar feeling to the dial, as they're enlarged beton with a brushed finish to match the applied markers. Their blocky shape perfectly captures the late 1960s, and to my surprise, the hands are very easy to read despite their similar shape. This is because the minute hand is substantially longer and has a bar across it, thus breaking up the form and aligning with the end of the hour hand when the two pass each other. Something which speaks volumes about how well designed this watch is the second hand, which has the same finishing as the other two. However, whilst not visible at first glance, the entire hand is tapered and narrows from the end of the counterweight to the tip, where a large triangle makes it just as legible as any other feature, come day or night. This is very difficult to find on other watches, which often have very small luminous pips on the second hand. When the lights go out, or you clamber out of your diving bell into 200 metres of water, the luminescence of the watch is very strong. It glows for many hours and allows you to see each of the 4 quadrants of the dial, as well as the hands and the first 20 minutes of the bezel. Now, I was rather unsure about the lack of luminous markings for the majority of the markers, and I still wonder what this watch would have been like with them. However, there is definitely no lack of legibility, and the symmetry created by this design is stunning, even if it's not quite as legible as some competitors. Sitting behind this watch's caseback is a predictable but not entirely expected movement setup. Inside this 90+% Swiss watch is the automatic ETA 2824-2. Being a reliable and eminently serviceable Swiss movement, it's just what you would expect with a 38-hour power reserve, hacking, hand winding and a beat rate of 4 Hz. However, instead of decorating the movement, they've engraved the nameplate with the Ollech and Wajs designation to show that it's not just any other ETA, and is fitted with a bespoke machined rotor, a really very nice touch, even though you can't see it through the caseback. The bracelet, a 100 Swiss franc option, is something absolutely to buy with this watch. Somewhere between a Jubilee and a Beads of Rice bracelet, it's brushed and hugely fluid on the wrist. It's what you'd expect snakeskin to be like, with no hairs pulled and unique mid-links with a pointed top. Aside from having screwed links, a very convenient addition, the clasp is a simple affair, and this watch's only real stumbling block. It's simple stamped metal with very little adjustment, but at least it's low profile so as to stay out of harm's way. As a watch, this Ollech and Wajs may be unique. It's a truly Swiss watch, and that means a lot to me. I have no problem with a brand making watches elsewhere, and indeed there are wonderful watches from elsewhere, whether it's China, Japan or Germany. However, Swiss made should mean Swiss made, and with the C-1000 that's just what you get. For a price of 1,596 francs if you choose the bracelet, this watch isn't vintage and isn't modern. Instead, it's a reminder of why we love dive watches, and expresses itself through impeccable quality and a very new approach to design. This is one of the best overall products I've had the pleasure to handle recently, and one which I've enjoyed reviewing enormously. But what do you think? Tell me in the comments below, and remember to like, share and subscribe for more. Thank you very much for watching. This is Armand from WatchChronicle.com, out.